Yeah, so we moved to the House of Sport, gosh, it'll be 3 years ago this August. So we'd been in planning for about 3 or 4 years. Obviously, that took into account the period of time through the pandemic. So knocked plans around a little bit, but we've been here for coming up for 3 years now. Yeah, so if I go back to when we started, we contacted, I think, virtually every local authority along the M62 corridor in terms of, I suppose, submissions of interest to house a national governing body. We whittled it down to three, of which Manchester was one and obviously was the winner. So we went through quite a detailed process, lots of conversations. And in terms of what the transition has then practically felt like, so we were in Leeds, we've been in Leeds forever since the RFL was formed. And I think only really in two locations across a really long period of time. So it was a big transition for us. What attracted us here was the sporting background of the city, the investment that the city had made in sport, and how that had flowed into the investment in the House of Sport as a concept. So it was a really big transition for us out of an out of town office where you would never meet anybody else or anybody else involved in sport, let alone anybody else, to this type of environment has been a huge, huge change for us and massively positive. Yeah, so I think a couple of points, and you've mentioned them. So first of all, in terms of being in a sporting environment and at the Etihad campus, which is now a globally recognised brand and name as itself, and in the city of Manchester, I think that's enabled us to heighten our own brand individually. But what I think the bigger impact for us has been access to a bit of a different workforce. So because it's so well connected transport-wise, because we're so close to the city centre and on the tram, that means that we've been able to probably advertise in different areas and to different people about people who might want to work in sport and not necessarily with an interest in rugby league, but with an interest in working in a sport or in the national governing body. And this campus and the House of Sport concept here has enabled us to elevate that message, and I think that's enabled us to attract a different type of person to come and work at the RFL. Exactly, and a couple of points on that, if I can, and just to make that real, I commute 90 miles to come to work here. I don't do it every day of the week, by the way, but I commute 90 miles. The access into here by road, therefore, is really positive for, let's say, younger colleagues who want to live in the city centre. The access out by tram and by public transport is really, really strong. But I've also got other international federations. They're, for example, flying into Manchester on Friday morning to go to our event at Newcastle at the weekend. So being so well connected is massive for us as a governing body involved in a global sport. Yeah, it does. And some of those are very, very practical and very sort of day-to-day considerations, really. So if you go for a cup of coffee in the cafe, you'll bump into someone that works in a different sport, might be doing your role in a different sport or another role. That would have never have happened to us in our existing building when we were previously in Leeds. And that's not because it was Leeds, it was because of where we were situated. We were in a House of Sport type concept. So there's that. I think we need to work hard on collaboration between governing bodies within the House of Sport, because I think there's still lots of benefits that the building or the community, if you like, can unlock as we move forward over the next couple of years. And I think that's for us to do some of that, as well as the House of Sport to do some of that as well. That collaboration between NGBs, I think, is a really positive outcome that we could look to embrace. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to that. So the continued development of the campus, the new Corp Arena, for example, has brought an added level of activity here. Obviously, the football club, other governing bodies, we come to events that are hosted in Sport City and in the House of Sport. So I've been to the squash, for example. I've been to the taekwondo. Absolutely wonderful to be able to engage those different facilities. But then on a day-to-day basis, like we are here, sat in this wonderful facility, our referees who are now based on site and previously who were based away from site, our match officials, their full squad will use the East Manchester Leisure Centre, for example. They use the track here in the field and the gym in the building. So we tried to take advantage of all of the facilities here, and that was a really big driver for us coming here. Yeah, it does do massively, and again, there's a number of layers to that. So in my sport, for example, we held the 2022, as it turned out, World Cup final down the road at Old Trafford, um, and we work hard with our clubs in the area to be able to access their facilities, and there's a lot around Manchester and around Greater Manchester. But also, as we talked about with match officials training, for example, we try and access as many of the facilities that the city has got to offer. Um, I see with great interest about the redevelopment of Old Trafford and the amazing investment over on that side of town, and the investment that's going on here with the North Stand extension and the delivery of the additional facilities moving down towards the Co-op Arena. So it's that type of feeling that we hope to be able, and that type of development that we hope to be able to access when we came here. And we were pretty confident of that because we'd seen Manchester do that over the preceding, 25 years. So these are exactly the things that we hoped we would see. Yeah, exactly right. And I'm also aware of people moving between governing bodies to do different roles in those governing bodies or try a different sport. And that is simply much easier to facilitate if you're all within the locality. So as you say about the velodrome and the National Cycling Centre over the road and everything else that's around here, that just allows that population of people who want to work in sport or governing bodies, that it gives you more of a critical mass of those people who are more willing to come to Manchester or more likely to come to Manchester and work. Yeah, and we really try and play on that. So our philosophy with member clubs, for example, if you're a community club or professional men's or women's club, is come and use the facility. Come and use our facility. It's the National Rugby League headquarters. It's as open to you as it is to us, and come and use the facilities here and the rest of the House of Sport facilities. So we're very much open house. We would much rather it be full, especially with hybrid working, which I think is a massive positive that this has enabled us to do as well, since the pandemic particularly. But we try and treat it as very much open house for our member clubs or individuals to come and use the facility too. So for example, because the campus is open late into the evening, we host a lot of our volunteer evenings. There might be match officials, there might be local referee societies, there might be local clubs, professional or amateur in the community game. And with it being open in the evenings and accessible, and as we said, transport accessible, we try and use it as much as we possibly can early and late during the day as well. It's not simply office hours anymore, because we're big believers in it. It's been a big change for us. I mean, it's been a really positive change for us.